Hey, welcome back to episode 5. Yep, 5 of the Cellarcast. Uh, I just woke up. I was gonna record this a little few hours ago, but my eyes were sore, and I was like, oh, if my eyes are sore, then that's a pretty bad indication for I'm not gonna be able to talk for like an hour and a half. uh, it's just, it's like one of those, kind of like how, they don't, like when they do test for AIDS, like they can't. This is a weird example, but it's like when they test for AIDS, they don't really like you can't like track AIDS. You can just track like this other thing that's produced in the body that correlates with AIDS. There's like a smoking gun, I guess. That's a weird metaphor, but it's what I think of. Um, yeah, I'm like, okay, well, if I'm if my eyes hurt, I'm not gonna be able to talk for like an hour and a half. Wait, whoa! I'm trying to turn down the. It looks a little loud on my screen. Ooh. Okay, sound check. All right. So I had an interesting Friday, an interesting Friday night. Someone tried to extort me for $2,000. So this all started. This is just a really weird thing that happened to me. So this started like well, we'll start at the beginning, really. I pretty much stay inside all day. Like, I stay in the house all day. I don't have a lot of opportunities to, like, go out and talk to people and to meet people, much less women. um, so, so, I've had to rely on online dating for several months. I say rely on, but yeah, I guess rely would be the right word, because the actual amount of dating is pretty sparse. Um, so I matched with someone, and they messaged me first. I should have known better, because something that I've learned is that if you match with someone on a dating app, if you're a male seeking female, and you match with someone on a dating app and they text you first, the two things. Number one, they are not actually a woman, and number two, they're trying to scam you. so so we start talking, and the saddest part is that scammers, the most in-depth conversations I've had with people have all been people who want to scam me. And then eventually she, quote unquote, she says that she wants to do like a video call, and I'm like, okay, yeah, sure. And this is after talking for maybe like 2 hours back and forth. So I got on a call, and she's being very sexual and very forthright about wanting to see things. I'm like, no, oh, okay, all right. So we get on a video call, and immediately it's like there's a few things that are strange to me. Number one, what I see when we connect, she looks a couple shades darker than what she did on all of her pictures. Like the person I matched with looked distinctly they're both Asian, but the person I matched with was like a pale Asian. And this was like a distinctly like a darker browner Asian. So like that's a little weird. That's kind of strange. Second thing is that she was on mute. And I was like, interesting. So I do a little motion, I wave, I'm like, hi, hi. I'm trying to get like any kind of reaction. And there's like nothing really. And I'm like, yeah, I can't, you're on mute or something. I can't hear you. And so the call ends, and then they try to start another call. So I pick back up, and I'm like, yeah, hey, what? What's the dealio? And again, nothing. no response, right? Like, no, I'm trying to be like, can you just give me like a hand signal? Just give me like a hand signal to tell me that you can hear me, that you're a real person. And there's nothing but sexual things start happening on the other end. And I'm like, okay. This is okay. Something feels very off about this. So I end the call. I'm like, whoa, my software just lagged for a second. All right. So I end the call, and then minutes later, maybe like 5 minutes, I try to send something like, hey, what's the deal? No response. And then minutes later, I get another call. So I just pick up. I'm like, okay. And it's I don't even know how to describe this. So it's a video. It starts with me, and it's like from when I called, and it's just like a few seconds of me, and then it hard cuts to footage of someone masturbating, and I'm like, what? Pardon? And like, you can't see, it's just like, view from the bottom down, being held at someone's, I guess, chest level. And I'm like, what the fuck? And there's a voice, there's someone speaking, and there's this voice, and whoever was really behind this person starts saying, I have just stop. I have just recorded you masturbating on camera. I'm like, whoa. I have just recorded you masturbating on camera. Do you want to? They were talking like, do you want me to delete this or to share it? Do you want me to? I'm immediately like, what the? Like, my head is spinning. I've never encountered something this bizarre. I'm like, what the fuck is going? What the fuck? And I'm just like, at first I try to like talk to them. I guess, it was my bad for engaging them at all. But I was like, what? What do you? So they asked, right? Like, this was all like a real blur. In my head, like, when I think about it, it's a clear progression, but trying to go back and tell it, it's like, okay. So he goes like, it's a little difficult to piece together the exact flow of the conversation. There's also a lot of circular talking. So I think he said something like, do you want me to share it or to delete it? And I was like, I guess delete it. And he was like, that will be $2,000. And I'm like, oh, $2,000? He's like, yes, you can pay it, or I will share it to your family and friends, and your life will be over. I'm like, this is so fucking bizarre. And I'm like, I don't have $2,000. So, maybe this says more about me. But initially I'm like, okay, this guy's trying to scam me. I mean, obviously, right, but he's not... He's trying to do that trick, where they give you a really outrageous price at the start, so they can go for their actual price, which is maybe like lower than that. So I'm like, I'm not gonna let this guy. Okay, let me see if I can haggle this down. I'm so fucking dumb. I'm so stupid. So he's like, $2,000. What can you pay? I'm like, 2,000? What about 200? He's like, there was this weird exchange where he was like, I cannot hear you. I cannot say can you pay? Can you pay? And I was like, 200. He's like, can you pay? And I'm like, 200. And he's like, I'm like, can you hear? Listen. Listen, speak up. It is very loud. It is very loud where you are. I'm like, I'm literally in a quiet room. I don't know what you're talking about. And he's like, speak up. So So I'm like 200. 200. He's like, no, sorry, sir, I cannot take 200 from you. It is 2,000 or nothing. This isn't racist. This is just how he sounds. I also don't care that much about being racist towards someone who would try to extort somebody for $2,000. I think it's okay if you kind of target it. Man, that sounds horrible. Let me rephrase that. For the purposes of making fun of someone who's a total piece of shit, I have no problem with you making fun of their accent. That's what I mean to say. Anyway, so eventually I'm like pacing around my room because I'm really nervous, and this is still on a video call. So he's like, "Sir, stop pacing, stop walking, sir." And I'm like, I'm nervous. I'm sorry. You understand why I'd be nervous? Sorry. Eventually, I think I hung up. I'm like, okay. No, I came to my senses. I cooled off. I was like, no, I've got this. There's literally not a single part where it goes from me. There's not a single bit where it pans directly from me to penis. So even if he does share this around, it looks incredibly fake. Right? So I'm like, he starts like just messaging me over and over. Actually, can I grab those messages? Did he delete his account? This was so bizarre. This was like for the next 5 minutes. Let me swap over. Oh, yep. Oh, very tricky. They just deleted all the screenshots. Okay. So he texts me. Do you think you escape me? Good luck. I got all your friends. Haha. And then he sent me he deleted all the screenshots, but I got them just to document it just in case of me or like my following list on Instagram. We'd moved from Tinder to Instagram, which I figured was pretty normal. A lot of people just hate talking over Tinder. So he sent me a fuck ton of images. Just like a bunch of shit of like him supposedly sending this video to people on that I was following. Luckily, I used my I guess I have like a personal account on Instagram that I really just used to upload like clips of me playing Guilty Gear, and then they have an official Tigan Moon one. That's the which thankfully, so basically this guy was pretty lazy. He basically just looked at who I was following on that account, because that's the one that I sent him when we moved off Tinder. He just looked at that account, who I was following, and he was like, these must be all friends and family. So he, I guess, sent it to them or whatever. So he sends it to me, and I'm like, oh wait, I don't really care. Go ahead. And then he goes, okay, good luck, haha. Good luck, man, ha 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 ha. Ready for shame? And I said, LMAO, cringe. I should fucking text him right now. Hey, just so wait, okay, so to give a little backstory, give a little or to finish out what happened. Basically, I saw that and I was like, honestly, like I was only following like 20 people, and most of them I don't even think I follow any family members on there. I was like, I could probably just. So what I did is I just wrote up like a quick little copy pasta about like, hey, explaining what happened, and being like, hey, if you see a weird DM, just like don't open it. And then I sent it to like basically 22 or something people that I was following, and they all got back to me and they were like, wow, that really sucked. That seems like awful. And I was like, thank you. So I was like, okay, yeah, this guy's embarrassing. Let me text him. Let's Hey, just so you know, since my friends, wait, fuck, what should I say? Let's spin it around on him. Wouldn't it be hilarious if he responded like on the while recording? That would be so funny. Just so you know, since my friends and family saw that video, I've gotten nothing but compliments on my impressive member. Does he know what that word is? Is he that scientific? Maybe not member. Member's funny, but maybe my impressive, just go with an old classic. My impressive schlong. In fact, my social standing has only increased. So maybe I should actually pay you the $2,000. For doing me that service. Alright, that... Anyway, so, yeah, that'd be fucking hilarious if I actually got a response. I'm gonna be keeping it by my phone by me just in case. Yeah, so like the first person that he sent me a picture that he was sending this video to was like the one person I was like, honestly, like I thought about it, I'm like, if like all my friends saw my dick, would I be that upset? It's like, not really. Like, it's not real. But honestly, like, they wouldn't even freak out that much. But the one person, and this is the first person that he supposedly showed me he sent this to, is my high school senior English teacher, who is just the sweetest, just the nicest lady, just the kindest person, incredibly supportive of me, and in all of my writing endeavors. And so once I sent that to her, once I sent like my explanation and warning, we ended up having a nice conversation. We haven't talked in a bit, and it was actually kind of nice. So yeah, I guess I really came out on top in this situation. That was basically how my Friday evening went, or Saturday morning. It went a little late, it ran a little late into the morning. It was quite stressful because it was just an extremely bizarre situation, but at the end of the day, I have people who care about me, and this guy is probably living in a very dirty building. I live in a dirty building, so I can't say anything about that. My house is filthy. However, he is scamming people out of... Dude, imagine this. Imagine your entire day is flirting with men on the internet and then looking at them masturbate and, making money off of extorting them. Oh my god. It's like being a sea creature. Like a bottom of the sea creature, like a little urchin. Jesus. What a shame. What a shame that your life has come to that you're in that position. On to something more positive. Now that we're 20 minutes in. We got our first comment on the podcast on the last episode, and this one really threw me for a loop. because I'm like doing whatever on my at my desk, and then I get a notification from YouTube saying you got a comment. I was like, huh, okay. Then I looked at it and I saw the username and I was like, what? Is that the real? Is that the? So is this comment from Mama Max, who I was bugging out. I was like, does Mama Max have a space in his name? But no, the actual Mama Max, the what is he at right now? 671,000. Geez, the last time I checked it was 670,000. That's really cool. Subscriber YouTuber. Still have to comment on my last episode of the podcast. I don't quote. He says, I don't use, he's got the little check mark, so it's real. I don't usually comment on videos, but since your last 3 podcast episodes haven't seen a single one, I want to go ahead and tell you that I love these and listen to them all the way through. You have a genuinely friendly presence that graciously accompanies me while I work. I hope you'll talk more about yourself and what got you into gaming in a future episode. Congratulations on 400 subscribers, and I hope to see you grow a lot more in the coming years. That's maybe one of the nicest things that I've heard in a very, very long time. So, thank you so much for saying that. I guess that you're probably listening to this one as well. Thank you, Mr. Max, if that is your name. Yeah, I was a little surprised because, well, one, this is fairly. I think of them as a pretty. And 671,000 subscribers is nothing to scoff at. So that was a little surreal. And second, if anyone is, I can't, just by sheer numbers, more people are probably familiar with his channel than mine. But most of his videos are very very dark in tone, very unsettling. I've seen many of them actually. I kind of had to stop because they were freaking me out. Sometimes I can only take so much of feeling bad about the world. Although I do think that there's a lot of effort to there's a good message ultimately, and let me move on. Yeah, that's very good, and I was surprised to get such a nice comment from such a very dark toned channel. I'm sorry if this is all horribly awkward, especially because he's probably listening to this as well. I have no idea how to conduct myself. Yeah, but there's a good question. We have a question. Talk about myself and what got me into gaming in a future episode. Well, this is a future episode. And that's a good question. What got me into gaming? Actually, really interesting. If anyone watched the interview that I did with Glenn Wickman, there was about 20 after around the point that video ends. There was about 20 minutes of him actually asking about me and like why I'm into all this stuff. And it's really difficult actually to pin down where I got into video games from, because it's sort of something that's kind of been in my life in some kind of capacity, but not really in like a usual way, I guess. So really, I think it started with the fact of me being on the internet really early. I have a really vivid memory of being... I have to have been... My parents were still together, so I had to have been 4 or less, 4 or younger. And my dad is he's always worked in stock trading. And so he worked from home, and he had in his office at his desk he had this setup of like 5 different monitors that he would have watching all the stock graphs and all that all day. And I remember sitting me down at like at his desk and like showing me how to use the computer. And I have to have been like 3 or 4 at this time, and I have this really vivid memory of them showing me like how to use the mouse and how to how to double click on things to open them, like how to open the Internet Explorer. Was he using Firefox at that time? I don't remember. How to open the internet browser, and how to, well, not search things because I couldn't like read at that time. I've been on the internet longer than I can read, actually. to give you an idea of how connected it is to my experience growing up. I remember being at like my mom's house and her like coming out of the shower and like running to the shower, like knocking on the door and being like, Mom, how do you spell CartoonNetwork.com? And she would like letter by letter spell it out for me, because I knew where I wanted to go and I knew how to navigate things visually, but I couldn't spell. And I don't know. Well, yeah. I mean, I guess that's a starting point because I loved watching cartoons and stuff like that, pretty normal kid stuff. But then obviously, I go on the website. I think my mom or something, they were like, oh, what is he like? Oh, let me go to I was a Cartoon Network kid. They were like, let me go to CartoonNetwork.com, and I was like, oh, cool, and then just set me loose. And everything on the website was conveniently laid out so that you could navigate it without having to really read anything. And so I would go play like Flash games. This is why, like, someone asked me one time like what the first game I ever played was, and I literally can't remember. Honestly, might have been. I have memories of like being on PBSKids.com. And oh god, you know how much of a gamer I am. I remember I had a friend over one time, and I just got bored and I was like, Mom, can I go on the computer? And I fucking abandoned my friend. He was like over doing something else. I don't know what he preoccupied himself with, but I went on PBS.com. PBS Kids. Sorry, probably what it was. PBSKids.com. And played, what was the show with the jungle? I don't remember what the show with the jungle was. It was it all took place in like a tree with a bunch of different animals. They were all like puppets. I remember that one. And yeah, I guess like really my childhood experience with gaming, I didn't own a console until I was maybe like 11. Let's see, does that line up? Yeah, it about lines up. 10 or 11. And I really started on like Flash games, and like addicting games was mine. That was my favorite. My brother was a mini clip guy. My little brother was a mini clip kid, but I was an addicting games enjoyer. And yeah, that just kind of got me. What got me into gaming? I was like, video games are really cool. This is super cool, and it's like active and stuff like that. I don't know. I guess there's a lot of things that are really compelling about gaming that I was especially vulnerable to at that time when I had a soft little child brain, and and then the whole, really, I got really into it, I guess, when I discovered YouTube. And I used to watch, obviously you would go look up gaming stuff on YouTube, and this is around, like 2010 to 2012. And so this is around the time that there was a really significant resurgence of interest in retro games. Part of that being with stuff like James Rolfe doing the Angry Video Game Nerd, and stuff like Screw Attack. I used to watch a ton of old Screw Attack videos. Do people know what Screw Attack is? They're Death Battle now, because the site itself was kind of failing for a while, and so their most successful thing was Death Battle, so they just rebranded to that. It's weird to think that Screw Attack doesn't exist anymore, and it's just this offshoot thing that became their main thing. I guess that's a simulation and simulacrum. Is it? I don't think that's the correct usage of that reference. So yeah, I really, it's interesting because when I think about it, a lot of my fandom for games came less from playing them and more from watching content on YouTube related to games, like video games. I was a huge fan of the Angry Video Game Nerd because it was so... I didn't find the potty humor that funny. It was entertaining enough, but what was really interesting to me was I was always really gripped by every episode I would learn something new. There was this whole... It really fascinated me, this idea that there was this whole history of gaming that was no one really talked about except for these internet people. And my parents didn't know. I also went to a school. I didn't grow up with I didn't really have any friends growing up until I was maybe in the 5th grade. So it was kind of just me, and I went to a school where no one played video games, at least in my class. It was weird. If I said Zelda, none of the boys in my class knew what Zelda was. They knew vaguely what Mario was, and nothing really else. So I was really alone in my enjoyment, my interest in video games. So I kind of secluded, I guess. I found kind of a comfort in this subculture that of this thing that I was interested in that really gripped me, and then it kind of let me into this world, I guess, of gaming culture and stuff like that, and all these in jokes and goings on in the news and the memes and all this stuff. And it was kind of a gateway into a community, even though I never really consider myself part of I always feel very separate from communities. But I guess I was in. It's always weird. I never know what it counts to be in part of the gaming community, which I don't even think really means much anymore. It's a little nebulous, but it was yeah. I'm stuttering a little bit. I'm trying hard to put my words together. That's what got me into gaming, is that I identified with the passion of the people who would make content. People really, James Rolfe was a huge influence on me in a lot of ways, creatively and honestly as a person, sort of. There's this he used to do this yearly sort of marathon series called Monster Madness on his channel, where during October every day he would do a video, and all of this was prepared throughout the year, and then he would just upload it once a day, for every day. Every day was a different horror movie, because he's a huge horror fan. And that's not in the Angry Video Game Nerd burping, sorry, pardon me. That wouldn't be in like the nerd persona. That would just be like him talking. And that's where you got this like sense that this guy was like actually, like, every time, something that always came through on the nerd episodes was that, like, yeah, the presentation is really crude and all that, but the actual, like, when he starts to like talk about stuff, like when he gets kind of serious, you can tell he's like legitimately pretty intelligent, and he like knows what he's talking about, especially like when he starts talking about movies and stuff, and because that's kind of his main domain really as a filmmaker. There's also just like, those nerd episodes are surprisingly really well shot in retrospect. Like his use of different camera angles and these really interesting like different frames. There's never like a, you know, like me, all my shit is just shot on a face cam from one angle head on. He would go with all these like really interesting, like he was a real filmmaker. But anyway, there was this one episode of the Monster Madness one year that really struck me. And it was this video on King Kong. And, you know, so he summarizes the movie, then he talks about, like, the context it came out in, and a lot of the filmmaking techniques that were pioneered by that movie, like the different special effects, the different... I don't have a great memory of it, but there's a lot of, you know, special effects obviously were a big part of it, like, not just in, like, the monster and all that, but... a lot of like filmmaking techniques that were really pioneered in that movie. And there's this part that like always really struck me, because when I was like 9 or 10, I was watching this, and I remember there's a bit where, because he went to film school, and I'd heard of, like, you know, the best movie ever, Citizen Kane, and there's this bit where he says something along the lines of like, you know, you go to film school and the professors like throw Citizen Kane on your desk and they say, this is the best movie ever made. But then, like, why does that have to be the best movie ever made? Like, for all the, when you look at like all the advancements that King Kong made, like, why can't King Kong be the best movie ever made? And I remember this like so vividly. I use the word vivid a lot, but that's how I remember things, I guess. I remember this so well, this moment that I like heard this, because it was like something it had never occurred to me. Something like that. This idea that like someone in authority, or someone who seems to have like authority, who's like telling you what's what, that you could make an argument against them based off of like what you think is right, or what you think is correct, or meaningful to you. And I think that had a really big impact on me not really backing down from my interests. And like, people made fun of me. I was bullied to some extent throughout school. And because I don't know, like no one knew what the fuck I was talking about. And that automatically means that I am worthy of mockery. So I would, yeah, I think that had a really big part in me saying like, no, like, I think video games are cool, and like other things that I like these things, like, people tell me that it's like stupid, but it's meaningful to me, and I think that kind of made me double down on it in a way. and all that content that I consumed growing up kind of planted this interest for retro games and history and all that. And I've never been a particularly trendy person, which you might have been able to tell. But yeah, how long have I been talking? We're at almost 40 minutes. Just me going on about myself. Yeah, that's kind of how I got into gaming. I grew up like in the like watching it, and not as much playing it, but watching it, and I kind of got an appreciation for it through that. yeah, I mean, there's an entire discussion to be had on why gaming is appealing, or what is engaging about it, but that's probably a different topic. uh, and then I don't know. Wait, here's a bonus thought. I guess that as I kind of grew up and I started branching out and playing different types of games, I kind of like different games kind of fulfill different desires for me, or different, like, leisurely desires. Like some games, I just love playing fighting games because of the competition and self-improvement and a lot of things unique to that genre that I find really enjoyable. But with, there's a competitive context to that. And other things, like other games, I love to just put on a podcast in the background and play a JRPG or something and just grind levels. That's really calming. It's almost like Zen to me. Washing the dishes, the idea of washing the dishes is a Zen activity where you just kind of get to relax and do a semi-repetitive task and just sort of think. That's kind of what RPGs do for me a lot of the time. They aren't constant engaging, constantly using all my brain power. So yeah, gaming is very important and very central in my life, and it just kind of gets more so the more that I really branch out. Thank you, Mama Max, for the comment. I can't believe that I'm saying that sentence. Anyway, there's some news this week. Obviously, the most important thing, speaking of, we talked at the top about disgusting, low-life predators who prey on people. The Blizzard news, probably the biggest gaming news of the last year, probably all year. Besides, would Cyberpunk this year or late last year? This is pretty big. I don't know. This is one of those. There were allegations with Riot. There were allegations with Ubisoft. There were allegations with Quantic Dream. This one feels a little different because with those other games or with those other studios, people aren't really invested in Ubisoft. There's also Ubisoft news about some nonsense they've been getting up to in their offices. People aren't really invested in Ubisoft, at least not anymore. They're too big. They're all these companies, all these huge publishers, they just kind of end up like airlines. You're not invested in American Airlines or United. They're just the most, it's oh, this game's being published by Ubisoft. Alright, it's this flight's only most convenient through United. Alright, I guess I'll fucking take United. People aren't even that invested in Riot. They're just addicted to League. And to lesser extents their other games. People are legitimately invested in Blizzard as a company and as an entity and a personality. It's kind of it's got this. Blizzard is like Disney, where there's people who there's people who grow up watching Disney cartoons, and they're I want to be an animator, and I want to go work at Disney or Pixar, and that's their dream job. There's people who grew up playing Blizzard games, playing Warcraft, Diablo, Starcraft, World of Warcraft, now Overwatch and all these extremely influential games. And they're it hits them on a level where they're I want to do this for my life. And I want to work at this company. That's my dream. Imagine having such a powerful effect on people. Imagine having such a powerful effect on people that you could make something that someone would play or watch or, whatever. And they would say, like, I want to do this. I want to go into this field for the rest of my life. And I want to work I want to work for you. Like, that's absurd. That's crazy. How many people get to say that? And it's what makes it such a shame that passion and that love was betrayed by the people in leadership at Blizzard. If anyone's not aware, I realize I haven't stated it, but if anyone's really not aware, the state of California, one of their like labor departments, something. It's like two things. One of them is labor, and the other one seemed like unrelated, but they're part of the same department. They did a 2-year investigation into Blizzard claims of basically they unearthed a deep set in culture, a workplace culture of sexism, pay inequality. This is also very sensitive content, and it's pretty dark, so if you're sensitive to stuff like this, then you should probably be avoiding anything about this topic as soon as I said Blizzard. Obviously, like, sexual harassment, sexual assault, borderline, at least. Incredibly disgusting and really vile behavior from members of Blizzard It's kind of unclear. It seems like it was just a lot of people, and mostly from men to women, which is what makes it really. I mean, if it was any other way, it would be upsetting anyway, so I won't. It's very upsetting. And there's also, like, a racial component in some instances. There's just ridiculous shit, like, there was a black woman working there who she asked to take time off, and she had to write a 1-page essay on what she would do with her time off. There was... And her other coworkers were not subjected to that. There was... women were, like, punished with bad reports for going on maternity leave. There was a woman who was not promoted because she might get pregnant, and I think the quote was literally like, might like being a mom too much. Jesus Christ, dude. Like, and then just, like, really overall just, like, making rape jokes towards women, just, like, really unprofessional, pretty loser stuff. Unprofessional, not cool. I wish that was the worst of it. But it doesn't stop. Obviously the worst case was a woman who was in a sexual relationship with one of her supervisors, her male supervisors, who took her... Yeah, sorry. Also, there's suicide in this story. She took her own life on a company trip. They were on a company trip, and on that company trip, that supervisor was found by police. Because naturally, this is like I'm assuming a hotel or something. And he had brought an anal plug and lubricant. And you're like, holy shit. And sometime earlier, pictures of her genitals had been shared around at a company holiday party. This is, like, absurd. This is, like, crazy. Like, the original article that summed all this up on Kotaku, I think, called it, like, the headline called it a frat boy culture. Dude, at a certain point, That's an insult to frat houses. Like, obviously there's some very bad frat houses, but like, frat house behavior is like getting drunk, being belligerent, being kind of a douchebag. In the worst case, and obviously all this type of stuff happens in the worst case scenario, but like, I'm sure, some people listening here know people who've been or have been in frat houses themselves. And like, one of the things that like this, that really stands out to me is that like, this is not normal. This whole thing of like, at company parties, company holiday parties, you're passing around nude pictures of a coworker? This is bizarre. Like, this is not normal, like, guy behavior, like fraternal behavior. I went to an all guys school, high school. That would have been, most people would describe as being a jock school. And it definitely wasn't all jock, but this was like, that's weird. Like, that wouldn't happen. Like, the most I feel like the most you would get is like, you're talking to like your friend, and he tells you that he got nudes from someone, and you're like, yeah, well, but this person that you're talking about, like, you don't know them. They're just an idea. You don't even know their names. And like, that's it. And that's just I don't know. It's just like that's just like a guy thing. Just completely disconnected. Like, oh, cool. Nice job, bro. That's like the very most. The idea of like taking nudes of someone, and then like one of your peers, one of your coworkers, and then showing it around, and then doing it like out in the open. It reeks to me of like being protected. It's because like there's no way. Here's the thing. There's like a very there's like this you know how like bullies have this kind of like sixth sense, this social sixth sense. That's really hard to say. Say that 10 times fast. Where they can just kind of like pick up on people who are vulnerable. Like they can just look around. They can be like, yeah, that kid he's been having trouble getting to sleep because he's listening to his parents argue while they think that he's asleep. And he's getting all fucked up at home. That's a little real. They can just like look around, and they can just sniff it out. They can sniff out like, who's vulnerable, who can I victimize, who's gonna stand up for themselves, who's maybe got people around them that are gonna stand up for themselves, and like who's a target. That's like, there's like this predator sense where I think that like these types of people who would do this type of thing, like we've seen it at Blizzard, like groping women, doing alcohol, drinking alcohol, and like doing cocaine at the office, and like going around and groping women. Like, obviously those substances make every situation, it basically just gonna reveal you. It's gonna release your inhibitions of how disgusting and slimy you are on the inside. And these types of people, like, they aren't going to do it around the people who are going to stand up for the victims. Right? Like, they're not stupid. There's this really bad, I think, tendency to characterize predators as being stupid. I mean, sometimes they are. But in a sense, they're very intelligent. In a way that is very distinctly predatory. Like, if you have the mind to if you think it's like it's hard for me to get in the mind of someone like that, but if you think it's okay to grope people and you don't see anything wrong with that, or if you, I feel like there's this kind of dissonance or this disconnect between them and common societal standards of like, they don't think it's wrong, but they know that people will disapprove, so they don't want to do it around people that they know are going to disapprove. So they feel them out. They're like, they aren't going to do it as soon as they meet you. They're going to meet, someone's going to come in, they're going to test the waters with them just through like conversation. And then they're going to make a judgment of like, can I do this stuff around them? Are they going to just like be a bystander, or are they going to like do it with me? Are they going to participate with me? And that type of person, I can imagine they're also very good at convincing people to be on their side if they don't reveal that part of themselves early on, because there is a clear protection going on from upper management, which is really where the failing is. Because like, you can talk like, man, I'm sure, like, I saw these things, you know, people saying that like people should have said something, they should have like stood up to these people, or like, you know, like, doesn't matter how senior they are. And the thing is, like, I'm sure there were tons of people, I'm sure there was lots of male coworkers in that environment who wanted to, and maybe even did, and then nothing happened. And eventually that's just the lay of the land, and you can't do anything about it. You just kind of, it's like hopelessness, right? That anything's going to change. This is just what the company's like, and I can't do, also, like, you know, exploiting. A lot of people, I'm sure, felt really trapped by it. They're like, they couldn't just quit, right? Because there's this really bad tendency in game dev to tell employees that, like, if they quit, they're never going to get an opportunity like this again. They're going to be out on the streets, it's too competitive, and you're going to be shackled to us, and we're going to just abuse you as workers. In, like, regular worker abuse is bad enough, man. Then you add on that there's a lot of people who, like, Blizzard is their dream job. Blizzard's their dream job. And God, it's so heartbreaking to just imagine someone who was that type of person. They finally land their job at Blizzard and they get in, and it's this, like, fucking nightmare. It's so good. Oh, jeez. I wish... It makes me sad. It's just a terrible situation. Maybe if I was building to a point, I might have lost my train of thought. But yeah, you know, people feeling trapped. I guess that's whatever I was talking about. Like, being in an abusive scenario feels kind of, it's, you know, it's a lot like being in a relationship, any other abusive relationship, I guess, of like, this person has something that I need, or if something bad is going to happen if I retaliate or if I leave. And in this case, it was like financial. You know, it was like, man, some people moved their families across the country. I'm sure there's people who moved their families across the ocean to work at Blizzard. And, yeah, my heart goes out. I can imagine the vibe in the office being very tense or very sullen, because like when you know that you work in this place where all of this god awful stuff is happening and you can't do anything about it even if you want to, eventually you just kind of give up hope. And then the statement that Blizzard released afterwards was totally disgusting. Whoever their PR team is, whoever that fucking lady who was I don't know if anyone was aware of this, but Blizzard, I don't know what position it was VP, it was in some high up position. They hired a lady who was a member of President Bush's cabinet, who is she's very pro torture, if you know what I'm talking about. She's a war criminal. And so she works at Blizzard, and she made this statement like, well, I came on 6 months ago, or 2 years ago, or something like that. Pretty recently. She's like, I came on 2 years ago. I never got harassed. It's like, yeah, the fucking 65-year-old woman who was in the president's cabinet, I'm amazed that you didn't receive any harassment. I'm amazed that it was like if you're, this is what I'm talking about. It's like, you can't think that this is any kind of, only an idiot or someone who vouches for torture would have such an evil, backwards way of thinking. Like, who, if you're a predator, like, you know, back to what I was saying, like, you're not gonna fucking go for this person. You're not gonna go for like a high up manager. You're gonna go for like the new hire who really wants to work at Blizzard, because you're a fucking predator and you're a scumbag. And then, you know, all of these conflicting things of Blizzard's PR team saying, no, that wasn't what happened, that's not what Blizzard's like, and then J. Allen Brack coming out and saying, yeah, I'm sorry. So basically the statement is, reminds me a lot of Channel Awesome, of like, nothing happened, but we are sorry. And the funny thing is that like, there's no running from this. There's no running from this. The discussion I saw on Twitter, a lot of former employees, no one was saying, oh, well, my time at Blizzard was fine. I saw probably at least 20 people saying the sentiment was, gee, I'm surprised this didn't come out sooner. Like, people know. This is the idea that upper management didn't know is absolutely ridiculous. It's a really unfortunate case of, I think from what I understand of people who are a little more invested into Blizzard games, World of Warcraft, stuff like that. I've been watching a lot of like Asmongold recently. Blizzard always had this like rock star persona. And like when you look at their behavior of like, oh yeah, drinking and coke, we're fucking rock stars, dude. We made Warcraft. And then you happen to hire one person who's maybe not so reputable, or not reputable, but maybe not so on the up and up in terms of ethical standards. And first of all, drugs and alcohol should not be in the fucking workplace in the first place. It should not be there in the first place, but like when you do, and this guy who's kind of gross has a relationship, has a friendship with someone who's like the president, and they're buddy, and he goes and he does, you know, these substances that lessen his inhibitions, and then he does these really awful, scummy things to people who don't feel like they can defend themselves because of his position. They report it, and then, you know, this weak-ass leadership goes, oh, well, we'll have a talk with him. We'll have a talk with him. And then they go, hey, you better knock that off, okay? I'm like, okay, yeah, it's really gonna change. I've been in leadership positions, like in I'm a Boy Scout. I've been in leadership positions where I had to deal with some kids who were really insufferable and who had a bunch of behavioral problems. And like you can have a talking to someone, but usually if it's, you kind of know, like a lot of times it's just like kids who they're just being kids and they're just directing their energy into being annoying. Sometimes like we had this one kid who was, there was obviously a problem with the way he was being raised. We had a couple kids like that. And it's like, at some point, me giving you a stern talking to is not going to help you. Like, this is your parents. You can change that when they're 11. When you're like fucking 45 and you're working as like a senior creative leader manager at Blizzard Entertainment, it's a little too late. And you just fire those people. Really the best thing. So like this culture, I can imagine how it starts. And then it proliferates. And then more people come in. And they don't filter out. Like, you can't filter out someone's ethics, really, from like a hiring process. But you can make sure that the first sign that they're going to be a problem, you give them like 2 strikes. If it's sexual, you gotta have like, if it's like a comment, that's strike 1, I guess, or something like that. If it's like physical, it's strike 1 to you're fired immediately. Like, come on, there's no excuse. J. Allen Brack, interestingly, there's nothing about him doing any of this stuff, which I believe. He's probably an okay person in real life, at the very least. He's just extremely weak-willed when it comes to putting his foot down about his values. God, that statement he released, I'm just ranting right now. This has been on a lot of my, this has been a huge story, especially now that I'm kind of invested in like Final Fantasy XIV, which has a lot of people who came from World of Warcraft, who had a deep connection to Blizzard, and this is very... When I was living in Chicago, I grew up in Chicago, if no one was aware. I don't know if I've ever mentioned that. My first Boy Scout troop, actually, one of my best friends there, he was a huge Blizzard fan. He was a huge Blizzard fan. He played WoW, he played Overwatch, he played Diablo, he played fucking Heroes of the Storm. He played all their stuff, dude. Man, I wonder how he's doing. I wonder how he's taking it. I should get back in contact with him. I should email him or message him or something. Jeez, that's totally sidetracked my train of thought. Fuck, what was I talking about? Right, yeah, Brack. He's probably fine. I think he's just in way over his head. Also, he only became president of Blizzard like a few weeks ago. Or no, a few years ago, like 2018. Sorry. Like 2018 he became president. So he inherited this. And it's his fault. It's totally his fault for not. He should have gotten in. And there's no way that he... Here's the thing. Is he was working at Blizzard before then. There's like this thing about... wait, let me finish one train of thought before I finish the other. Let me bring this into the station. He obviously... There's no way he didn't know about this going on beforehand. Or even have the inkling. The second he got into a position where he could change things, there should have been a clean sweep of Blizzard management. Anyone who ever did anything like this. Clean sweep. Put your foot down. No more alcohol. No more drugs. We're not rock stars. We make a fucking video game. Let's be real, guys. Let's sober up in more ways than one, you know? And he didn't. And there's this adage about like one, you know, people talk about like police violence. Like one bad cop is one bad cop. If the rest of the force doesn't do anything about him or her, that the entire force is a force of bad cops. Like, we were taught in school about being a bystander, and that being a bystander and not stepping in when someone is being victimized doesn't have the power to fight their own battle, which is the situation here. Is totally sucks, but that's how jobs work in hierarchies. That you can't be a bystander, you got to be an upstander. Did they say that? There's totally a school program that said don't be a bystander, be an upstander. Even if it wasn't mine, someone's totally was that. And yeah, I don't have any sympathy for him either. The only sympathy I have is that he came into it, and that he had a responsibility, but he completely failed his responsibility. And at this point, the only thing to do is, I'm sure Bobby Kotick's pissed right now. I don't have any love in my heart for Bobby Kotick either, but I'm sure he's not happy about this. He's just kind of like a scumbag in that he fires. He'll lay off 200 people and give himself a bonus at the end of the year. But I don't think that he's a fucking molester. I'm sure he's not happy about this. The only thing to do now is the good old Jab has to basically fire everyone. When I say fire everyone, I mean fire everyone who did this. Fire everyone and then resign. That's the only thing. That's the only thing to do. Is you gotta burn it. You gotta scorch the earth, and get a brand new team. And unfortunately, I don't think that's gonna happen. It might have. There's a chance it's gonna happen, but I have a feeling that they're gonna get a bunch of There's a few ways they could go. The one that I'm worried about, because it doesn't actually work, is they're gonna fire everyone and then bring in a new diverse board. I don't want to come off like one of those anti-SJW people, but the numbers, the research shows. I can't pull it up right now, but you can do some research of your own. It's pretty easy to find. Things like diversity training, diverse staff, and stuff like diverse management actually has no influence on the level of harassment or toxicity in the workplace. Shocker, believe it or not, women and minorities can also be bad people. Things like diversity training, sensitivity training, none of this actually demonstrates. Again, it's infantilizing predators. Treat predators like what they are, people who know that what they're doing is wrong. Bad people who, if you're an adult, I'm sorry. If you're a kid, there's still time to teach you, I think. If you're an adult, I'm sorry, you can't be in this company. If you're a predator, you know exactly what you're doing. I'm really sick of these arguments that, well, you can just send someone to a sensitivity course and they won't be racist anymore. That's not they know. They know, and they don't think anything's wrong with it. And they think that you trying to tell them there's something wrong with it is annoying. Sorry to come off like a real 4chaner there, but that's the path that I'm worried about, because it won't fix things. I want things to be fixed at Blizzard. I want those people to get their dream job and go there and it's actually their dream job, and they don't have to worry about being propositioned or having gross comments made towards them, or having a supervisor pressure you into a sexual relationship, or being molested at the fucking office, or having your nudes passed around at a company party. That woman who took her life, she took her life on a company trip. Think about that. It's like those people, those iPhone workers where they have to put the nets outside the factory because they keep throwing themselves out of the window. Think about that. How many people kill themselves at work? How many people kill themselves at work? Like, imagine. Most people do it. It's to relieve their own suffering. They think it's like the only way they can relieve their suffering that's left to them. In their perception, at least. And so most people, they don't want to inconvenience others when they do it. And so oftentimes, a lot of cases, you'll see people who are suicidal do it in private. They'll do it at their home. And they'll try to minimize the impact that it's going to cause to random bystanders. Imagine what you have to be going through to take your life on a company trip. You're in a probably, I think this was in Europe. You're in another country. You're at a hotel. You're next door to total strangers. You're with your coworkers. It's gonna get the hotel, and someone's gonna find you. Everyone's gonna find out there. The local police are gonna get involved. The hotel staff is gonna have to do a report. It's gonna be an investigation. Imagine what you have to be going through to say, like, the amount of suffering I'm in is more. This is not to say that this person is being selfish at all. This was a person in a very dark place. And it was so dark that they literally could not go a single second. They could not go another day of living like that. I mean, that supervisor who brought a sexual implement. I can only imagine. I can only imagine how horrifying that is. It's difficult. It's difficult to talk about this. Because the only point I can make from my position is like, God, I hope that these people are feeling better. I hope that no one else gets hurt and that things turn up and that the best case scenario happens. And that eventually we can get back to knowing Blizzard as a company that makes good games made by happy people that bring people enjoyment. I have to hydrate. Ooh, did that pick up? I cracked my knuckles. I've been talking for so long, I have to take a drink. Okay, I had some other things queued up on the docket. It's so hard to transition out of that. Besides, like, my heart goes out and I feel a lot of sympathy. Not empathy, but because I don't know what that's like. But I have been in contact with predatory people and real scumbags and So the something a little nicer, something a little pick me up after that. Because you can't just be sad all the time, man. So the Tokyo Olympics are right now. And they had the opening ceremony, and to my very pleasant surprise, they used a lot of music from video games. And they had a great selection. Really kind of a couple surprising choices. So when we got First Flight from Ace Combat 5. I'm not familiar with Ace Combat, but it's a great triumphant, a lot of like triumphant music, of course. Frog's theme from Chrono Trigger, another nice like really, real epic sweeping song. Robo's theme from 2 Chrono Trigger songs. A lot of JRPGs represented here. Robo's theme, which is a little more playful and a little more fun. That was cool. The introduction from Dragon Quest, or the Overture. That's a great song. And the Final Fantasy main theme. And the Victory Fanfare from Final Fantasy. I don't know exactly which one they played, but it's basically been like the same melody. It was probably an orchestral arrangement. Gradius. That was surprising. Not a lot of love. There's so many like of these top-down space shooters that have just amazing soundtracks. What was I listening to? Oh, was it Thunderbirds? Thunderbird? Is that the Genesis Thunderbird game? It was something, it was like, is it Firebird? Genesis, it's like a Genesis space shooter. I really want to get this. Yeah, Genesis shmup. Nope, it's not on this list. Oh, it has an amazing soundtrack. Rolling Thunder? No, Rolling Thunder is no. It's like thunder. It's like planes, It's really it's yeah. There's to not spend too much time looking this stuff up. A lot of space shooters with like really great soundtracks. The Genesis library in general I think is a little underappreciated for anything that's not Sonic. There's a lot of great Sonic music, which in fact there's another one here they did play in the opening ceremony. There's a Sonic song. But yeah, a lot of the Genesis soundtrack is really underappreciated. Heroes Fanfare from Kingdom Hearts. The Olympus Coliseum, which is the perfect song from Kingdom Hearts. Proof of a Hero from Monster Hunter. Great. That's a great like hype. I would call it like a hype symphonic song. It's got this great swell. Song of the Ancients from Nier. Sweet. I love Nier music. Keiichi Okabe is an amazing composer. He is a huge part of the identity of those games. And Song of the Ancients is a beautiful song. Very kind of like exciting. I don't know how I describe it. It's up tempo, but it's kind of melancholy. But it works for like an opening ceremony. Guardians from Phantasy Star Universe. Another property I've never really listened much to the music of. There was a medley of songs from the Saga series called Makai Ginyu Poetry Saga Series Medley 2016. I guess it looks like it was only, there's no real recording of it that isn't like a live version. That's cool. So the article I'm looking at just linked the entire Saga Frontier OST. Starlight Zone from Sonic the Hedgehog. What a lovely little song. If you want just like a happy, if some of the news has gotten you down, listen to Starlight Zone from the Sonic OST. It's just, I put it on. I put it on, I immediately just started smiling and bobbing my head. What a great song. Soul Calibur 6. The brave new stage of history. Surprising pick. Very recent, probably the most recent game on here. Tales of the it's called Royal Capital, from Tales of, which is a nice, they went for a lot of symphonic music. Tales of Slay's theme, another Tales of song. Guru. So, and then the last one, this one kind of surprised me. Pro Evolution Soccer, which is known in Japan as Winning 11. The walk-on theme, the theme song for Pro Evolution Soccer. Surprisingly, a really cool song. Apparently, this series has some really sick, cool music. That's cool. I would totally recommend going and listening to just some snippets of some of the pieces. They got a pretty good variety. Of course, they stuck with try to stick to the orchestral, more triumphant end of songs of OSTs, but a really good selection. And I would totally recommend just giving each of these a quick listen. Because they're all great. They're all really good. Not all of them might be your cup of tea, but there's a decent variety to delve into. That was super cool. It's really neat to see games. It's cool to see a country recognize video games as an important part of their cultural export, which is really interesting because no country in the West really does that. And it's a shame. It's it's just kind of something on the sideline for most people, which is why it's interesting to see things like game OSTs being represented like this. Really, it made me feel a little better, even if you don't like what the Olympics stands for and their some of the things surrounding it. But at the end of the day, they had the opportunity to do something cool that represented Japanese culture, and they went with a really cool choice. So I'm glad about that. How long have I been talking? An hour and a half. Holy moly. I'll wrap it up soon. Right, I wanted to mention some other nice things. The first DLC character for Guilty Gear Strive was announced, and there were some leaks that were these look like they could be real, or it could just be unrelated. Basically, some people found when the PC version came out, they data mined some folders in the game files that had some character names that were not presently playable. And there were about 5, and we already knew that there were going to be 5 characters in the first season of DLC. And the first one of those was Goldlewis Dickinson, who is a character who was first seen in the story mode, which is a little... I'm trying to think if there were any other characters in Guilty Gear who were first only ever seen in story mode and then became playable. Maybe Raven from Exerd? I don't think so. Maybe hinted at? I don't know. Maybe from version to version, but this is the first time that it's character had a somewhat significant role in the story mode and then later became playable, which is super cool. And Goldlewis Dickinson he looks badass. He looks awesome. We've already gotten his starter guide basically, Goldlewis, he's the Secretary of Defense for the United States. He's the Secretary of Absolute Defense. He is a massive man. He is a huge, unbelievably overweight mountain of a man. And he has, like, he's vaguely cowboy themed. He has, like, a cow skull belt buckle and, like, chaps. And he carries around a coffin that he swings around, and it has an alien from Area 51 inside of it. And he just looks really cool. He looks fucking cool. And his design is like, there's too much thought put into this design for this guy not to be a playable character. There's way too much special, like, there's characters in the story mode who are like, they're important, but they're not. You're like, this guy's never going to be playable. Just because it just looks too plain for a guilty character. Goldlewis is like, this guy could be a playable character. And they showed off his moveset, and he looks crazy. When I saw that the starter guide was like 5 minutes, I was like, seems a little long. Because they usually just go over their specials. They go over, like, basic play style, and then all their special moves, and kind of like what they're supposed to be used for, and then a little wrap up. And it takes like 3 minutes most of the time, and I'm like, 5 minutes is a little long. A little long. And man, they did not pull any punches with his character. So he technically only has 3 special moves. He has 3 special moves. Except that's a lie, because one of his special moves is actually 8 different moves. So it's called Behemoth Typhoon. And basically it's executed by doing a half circle motion, and he'll swing his coffin. However, the catch is, you can do a half circle in any direction, and it's a different move. So, like, back to forward going down is one move. Back to forward going over is a totally different move. Going top to down, up to down, like on the forward, facing forward, that's one move. Top to down backwards, different move. And so they bust out a diagram to show all of the different Behemoth Typhoons that he has and what each of their effects are. And they look awesome. Like, some of them, they each have different properties where, like, one will be an overhead, one will, like, lift the opponent up, one, if it hits, and it'll cause, like, a wall bounce, and you can combo into like a normal into another Behemoth Typhoon. It looks so cool. It's going to be really difficult for me as a keyboard player, maybe. There aren't that many half circle inputs in Strive. And I play Nago Ryuki, who doesn't have none of his specials have half circle motion, so I haven't really done them. I'm really bad at doing the half circle motion for his supers. But it maybe I don't know. It depends on how the game handles, like, the input leniency, because it can be a bit of a pain, especially because I play with the key configuration that I use is I use a hitbox config, which is basically a hitbox is like a specialized controller. It's kind of like, how people buy, like, fight sticks, where it'll just be like, a slab with 8 buttons and a joystick on it for playing fighting games. A hitbox is kind of like that, except it's, instead of a joystick, it's buttons, and it's kind of like a similar, like, specialized controller, but for more reminiscent of a keyboard. And one of the things with Hitbox, one of the notable exceptions is that it doesn't use a traditional, like, WASD. It uses, like, an ASD of, like, left, down, right are all in a row next to each other, but up is actually below, like down to the right of those three. And it's basically you rest your thumb on it. And the reason for that is in fighting games, there's certain inputs that require you to go from like down to up or something like that. Yeah, usually down to up. Like there's characters who are charge characters, meaning that you hold one direction for a certain amount of time, then you kind of like tap the opposite direction and a button, and you'll do their special. You'll do that particular special. So like Guile from Street Fighter is a charge character. You hold back for like 2 seconds, and then you tap forward plus punch, and you get one of his sonic booms. And in the same vein, you hold down and then tap up and kick, and you get the flash kick. Well, you can imagine that doing that kind of motion on a keyboard where you have W, or you're going from S to W, is very cumbersome because you're basically lifting your middle finger, because there's a timing window, right? Like, it's not incredibly tight, but it's like you kind of snap from like one to the other. And there's a timing window of like going from your middle finger is not particularly dexterous, so lifting it off of S and then tapping W is kind of cumbersome and not comfortable and not consistent. So for people who play charge characters, you basically have to, it's much easier to map it to a button you hit with your thumb and just have up be a separate finger. So it's a little weird, but you hold down, you kind of have to rewire a little bit of your intuition. You hold S, and that's down, and then technically you're hitting a button that's lower than that to go up. But you can get used to it, and that's the configuration that I use. There's also certain techniques like, they're called like tiger knee moves, where you basically like a Sagat from Street Fighter. He has a move called Tiger Knee, where he goes from like down, and then it's like down, and then you go to top forward, like up forward. And so there's certain moves where like the way that the game, there's certain like things where you can do a move after jumping, for instance. Like in a move, there's a special that you can use in the air. And there's a technique called, it'll be referred to as tiger kneeing it, where basically you do the motion, and at the very end you basically hit up. And you technically do the motion first, like you do a quarter circle forward, but at the end you hit like up forward. And your character will then like jump and do the move. And you can get like instant air specials with that. And that obviously is a little difficult when your finger is slow and clunky. And just try like waggling your middle finger. It's like not easy. It's noticeably like heavier than your others. So hopefully I'll be able to play Goldlewis. He looks super cool. And I'm glad. You know what I'm glad about? One thing that's really neat is that, like, he's fat. He is a fat character. And fighting games he's a big dude. There's big characters in Guilty Gear. He's a big dude. And fighting games have always kind of like struggled to do fat characters, where like developers have always like, the notable examples I can think of are either like, would be like Bob from Tekken. Some people like Bob, and that's cool, and I think Bob is cool. He's a bit of a joke, but then again, a lot of characters in Tekken are kind of jokes. Bob's whole deal is that he's like, his whole gimmick is speed and weight. And so he's fat, but he's extremely agile. And it's like it is a gimmick because like you wouldn't expect it to, and there's an element of humor to that. But like the only other characters you can like fat characters that come to mind are like there's like sumo characters who are like generally fine, although usually don't get that much characterization besides like E Honda in Street Fighter he's just sumo. Street Fighter's also kind of struggled with like Rufus from 4, who everyone hates. He's got the same like fat but fast thing going on, and he's just kind of insufferable and annoying, and people hate him. And he's like kind of just to be mocked. And then like Birdie from 5, who is like big and gross. Birdie has a lot of personality, more so than some other Street Fighter characters. But he is like a lot of his personality is expressed through he's fat and gross and unpleasant, and he smells. And fighting games have kind of struggled to like figure out how to do a character who's fat and who is also a fighter and has a personality that is not either really shallow or a joke, like kind of a poor taste caricature. Goldlewis is like one of the first fighting game characters I can think of, in a first one that comes to mind at least, who's like, he's big and he's big, and he throws his weight around. He's heavy, right? Like, he has a fucking air dash. Why does he have an air dash? Why does Goldlewis have an air dash, but Nago Ryuki, who's like a 5,000-year-old super powerful vampire samurai, obviously extremely athletic, boundless stamina, he doesn't have an air dash. He can't even run. But Goldlewis, he can run and he can air dash. What's up with that? I don't know if he can double jump, but he can air, like, what? He can air dash? But like, yeah, he in his animations, like, he's heavy. He throws his weight around. Just because you're fat doesn't mean that, like, you can't do damage. Honestly, like, fat people have a bit of an advantage if they can actually move around a little bit, you know, as long as you're not, like, corpulent. Is that the right word? You know, where, like, you just, like, literally cannot move around. It's like, you know, if you hit someone with all that weight, like, it's meaningful. It's not like a paper towel. And I just think that's like cool. He's so much. The animations in Guilty Gear are great. Oh, fucking Bo Raicho. That's another fat character who's just gross from Mortal Kombat. I hate Bo Raicho. I was only reminded of him because I thought I was going to say how good the animations in Guilty Gear are and how much like personality you can see in those animations. But in Mortal Kombat, animations kind of blow. It kind of keeps me from enjoying the NRS games. But yeah, I think Goldlewis is actually he's super dope. I can't wait to try him. I'm glad that it's just like an interesting character archetype visually and like character wise, and he seems cool. Like, everyone likes Goldlewis already. Like, you know, those characters who come out and people are like, oh, this character I don't like this character. And there's characters who come out and you're like, this guy rocks. This dude seems awesome. Guys, what Goldlewis is. So I'm actually really, really excited to try him out. I think it'll be available on Tuesday, which is on the 27th. So that's dope. I'm really, really excited about that. Before I go, I will end off with some I mentioned on a previous podcast. I really wanted like a sci-fi MMO. Maybe not that, but specifically, but I was really interested in like Star Wars Galaxies, and I went and checked out the legacy servers for it. And it kind of turned me off because it was cool to begin with, but the the version of the legacy servers that you can find, like it's called Legends. That's like how the game was when it shut down, basically, the most recent version of the game. You play that and it's like, it feels like there's a disconnect, because it's the term is a theme park MMO, which is like, it always sounds like derogatory or like pejorative to me, like normie. it kind of has that feeling to it. There's like generally two styles of an MMO. Theme park, which is like something like World of Warcraft or 14, where you're experiencing a bunch of content that has been pre-made, basically. Maybe some stuff that you can improvise, but for the most part the focus is on content that has been created by the developers for you to experience. Going through dungeons, going through storylines, stuff like that. And there's sandbox MMOs, which are, pretty self-explanatory, and where you make your own fun within the system, within the world. And Legends, like the most recent version of the game, it feels like it was fun enough, it was enjoyable enough, but it really felt like there was a disconnect of the world. This world was not made to be a theme park MMO. Because, man, there are like, they give you a vehicle immediately in that game. And it's not like, it's like a mount, right? If they were to give you a mount in World of Warcraft immediately, that would make no sense, because it's like, that's a reward for doing content. That's because Galaxies does not reward you with mounts. The reason you're getting a mount is because you're going to be traveling long distances. You're going to be traveling for like 20 minutes to get from city to city. And that kind of world in a theme park, like when you're in a theme park MMO, traveling is not really the most fun part. It's really not. So like you play, in 14, for instance, you have these zones that have like points of interest. And each one of those zones, like there's traveling, and it gets a lot easier once you unlock flying and you have mounts and stuff. Travel is pretty quick. They want you to go through it once to explore, to get a feel for the world, to get kind of, invested and immersed in it. But they're not too worried about like forcing you to walk from one place to the other for like 20 minutes. They don't need you to be doing that, because the traveling is not that interesting. And where I think Galaxies kind of drops the ball is that, one, it's very confusing, because depending on the version you play, you're going to get a lot of mixed signals. Either way. So like the Legends, the most of which was the most recent version, uses the updated a brand new combat system that's way more like World of Warcraft. And it doesn't feel, it feels fine. It feels fine. It's fairly reactive, fairly responsive. But you're thrown in this world where like the interesting stuff is really spread out, and it feels like this identity has been like slapped over like wallpaper. It's got the theme park wallpaper slapped over it. Like you walk into a house that's a real fixer-upper, and you just put some just throw some nice wallpaper over the walls. It'll be fine. It's like, dude, there's asbestos in there. You gotta get a specialist for that, dude. And there's a disconnect. Then you go to Restoration 3, which was the most recent kind of legacy server that was trying to blend the two styles. And there's another disconnect that's completely different. It's like, okay, this world does feel like a sandbox. However, I realized a few things. One is that I don't really like sandboxes that much. Like, I'm not that great at like making my own fun in a game, if that makes sense. What I like is a game where I have a goal and the getting to that goal is enjoyable. I have a goal, working towards that goal is enjoyable because of the mechanics and the systems, and importantly, I am allowed to. It's a system where I get to choose how I want to approach the problem. I like solving problems, and I want to choose how I solve the problem. Which is why I love like Blood so much, which is one of the best 90s shooters in my opinion, because it has this super open combat system where like, okay, yeah, you have this situation, but you have all these different. There isn't one way to approach the situation. There's a bunch, depending on how it's set up, what weapons you have. Because of every weapon is like a tool, basically. It's like problem solving with guns, dynamite. And that stuff like that is what I find really exciting and interesting and really, really grabs me. But the doing has to feel good. And doing things in Galaxies does not feel good. There is no, like, a lot of people, like, you go and listen to people who played the game when it was, when it was still alive, when the servers were still up, and they're like, yeah, it died because Sony Online Entertainment, the SOE, they were trying to chase the World of Warcraft market. They were trying to redo things, and they totally fucked everything up by making it like with the new game enhancements, which was where everything got switched up to being like a more standard hotbar MMO. And you go and play it, and I'm like, honestly, like, yeah, obviously they were chasing the dragon on WoW, but honestly, like, you play 5 minutes. I really think that if the game had continued, I don't think there's any way it would have survived more than 4 years. I legitimately don't think that. Because the game feels bad. It feels bad and weird and slow, and the combat is not good. The combat is not good. It's like you hit your button to like shoot. There's no auto-attacking. So here's a few problems with Galaxies. Because I tried to get back into it. I tried to just check it out again, just to be sure. And I don't think my thoughts were very refined when I first talked about it on the podcast. So like, there's no, you select an enemy, and there's no auto attack of like firing your weapon or whatever. Your basic attack is a hotkey button, which I think is a detriment because when you have like a basic auto attack, it helps to differentiate your character's like more special abilities. Because like, even if it's just a slightly different in appearance, have knowing that like, okay, I have this one standard attack, and then I can do even like my special shot. It makes you feel like you're a lot more active in the combat. Whereas in Galaxies, it was like with the combat upgrade combat system, which was like the middle phase of the game. You like the fixed combat, quote unquote. I don't even want to know what the original combat felt like. It's like, okay, I select an enemy, my character doesn't do anything. I have to hit my button on my keyboard to do basic shot or whatever, placed shot, and then like a few seconds go by and it's not super clear if I did anything, and then I shoot and I'm like, oh, okay. It just doesn't feel responsive, and like having immediate response, even having like a cast bar or like a ready bar that fills up, gives you some kind of feedback on like that you're actually doing something. This was very slow and stiff, and it felt disconnected. And like when you feel, the biggest problem is when you feel like your inputs are not translating to your character, you don't feel like you're in control of your character, and you don't feel, it's hard to get invested. They feel like separate from you. And like when you like hit a button and then like a character does something, there's like a really special, unique connection that you have to that thing, to that like medium. One of the things I think is so interesting about video games, more so than the interaction, is the response. And which is why if a game has bad controls, like there's lag or it's clunky or whatever, it takes you out of the game and it makes it so hard to enjoy it, because you just can't get invested, because it doesn't feel like I'm sliding into the world. Like obviously I know I'm looking at a screen, I'm looking at a thing that's not real, but I feel like I'm having a hand in what is happening. And when there's this weird delay and it works on some kind of like a turn system, I feel so disconnected. It's also balanced really strangely, where like enemy, it's a slow game. And some people like that. I didn't care much for it. What's nice, it's like, you know, there's like a, when you start an RPG, it's like, okay, you do you fight a couple monsters. Oh, now I got a few levels out of that. Cool. Just something to like get the ball rolling. Just does not happen here. Like, you do a couple quests, and then you're like, you go out, and literally every single monster is 10 to 40 to 50 levels higher than you. And you're like, I can't fight anything. Like, how do I level? What do I do? I guess I just go accept quests. So you just run around looking for quests to accept, and there's like no one. And you spend a lot of time running around, and it's not that fun. Legends, like what Legends had up on it was that there was a very clear pipeline to get you experience. So I feel like if I was going to recommend the game to anyone, it would be to go check out Legends, honestly, because I don't think that Restoration's going to be most people's cup of tea. Legends at least gives you like quest lines and a more responsive combat system, even if it does feel really pasted on to a world that was really not made for it. You have to like get invested in the game to enjoy. Like you have to really, really buy into the world, because for no other reason than the fact that it's Star Wars. Because like when you're traveling from like place to place and it takes like 20 minutes, there's really nothing interesting happening. You're just going across very like low poly terrain. Maybe seeing something every now and again, like there's a building and you go in and there's nothing there. It's just a cube. You're like, okay. So what I did was I went and I tried out Star Wars The Old Republic. So I was like, okay, Star Wars MMO, I'm still interested. This one maybe has a style that appeals to me more. Let's check it out. So I played it for, how long did I play it? Let me go find it. The hell is it on Steam? Played it for 5.2 hours, and then I quit out and I decided to uninstall it to make room on my computer. Yeah, I didn't vibe with it very much. It feels very, isn't this a BioWare game? It's based off of the Old Republic. Yeah, it's BioWare. It's based off of the Knights of the Old Republic. And I think that the BioWare style doesn't work very well for me, because there's bits where, like, there's a lot. So one thing, everything in the game is voice acted. Surprisingly, they spend a lot of budget on voice acting, and I think in a way it kind of holds the game back, because like that stuff's expensive, and voice acting is like, yeah, get stuff voice acted for like important story stuff, but like I don't need to listen to characters talk about everything. I just kind of want to read it or skip through it, because that's what I started doing. I just started skipping through dialogue because I know it's not that important. And I think it kind of limits the amount of content you can do, where if you want to like add in just a little random detail to your world in like 14 or something, they can just like add a little text string in, have it pop up when you go talk to an NPC or when you walk by. Here it's like, okay, we gotta get someone in the booth, we gotta have everything pre-written, we gotta edit the sound, we gotta pay for the studio time. And I think it kind of it feels like everything felt a little cramped. It has a lot of really extensive solo content, like instanced solo content. There's solo content in 14. A lot of the main story is done mostly by yourself, with a few group activities of like when you gotta go into a dungeon or something. But there's always people running around. The world always feels alive. There were bits in SWTOR where I was like, I've been in this instance for like 20 minutes. And it's just been me. And sometimes that happens in 14 where like you go into an instanced battle and it lasts like maybe 5 to 10 minutes, depending on like, it's usually like important story beats or parts of like your job quest lines. It's never like you're just gonna go through this whole dungeon. It's always like a specific fight. You're gonna fight these waves of enemies. You're gonna fight this boss. SWTOR does like, you're gonna do this basically a whole single player mission ripped straight out of Knights of the Old Republic, to the point where you have like companions and like 2 companions with your main character. And it is really weird where like there's other people in the world who have the exact same character as your companion, and you're like, the game does a lot of things to remind you that you're playing a video game. So like obviously I played it with the free version, because it's technically free to play, and then they have like the subscription model, which gets you some bonus perks, and man, they throw those perks in your face all the time. There is a button I never appreciated. I was able to appreciate, but now that I have some context, some perspective, I'm able to appreciate 14's free trial so even more. Because in 14, there is a cash shop, right? There is a place where you can go spend real money. But there is not a button in-game where you can go to that cash shop. You have to go to a website. You have to go to a website and like on your browser. And I think you can like click a button to open up the new player guide in game that'll open up your browser, and then from like there you do a few clicks, you can get to the cash shop, but like it's out of the way. And 14 never pressures you or like throws it in your face. In SWTOR there's literally a button at the top on your main menu that opens the cache, like an in-game window, not a browser window, an in-game window, a user interface to pay for a subscription. When you first log on, when you first get into the game, this big sidebar opens up on the left, saying like, here's all the events going on. It feels like a mobile game. It's like, here's pay your subscription, blah blah. And it's like, ooh, I'm just constantly getting taken out. Every time you walk into an area where you get rested XP is basically like when you when you're in like a city or like a safe zone, basically, your character will build up a bar. You'll build up a bar in your experience meter that basically all of that experience you're gonna get fat. All of that bar you're gonna gain faster than normal. You're gonna get a bonus on all the experience you get up until you hit the cap of your bonus. So like 14 has it where it's like, I think the maximum if you like log out or you're in a like a city that's a rested zone, a sanctuary I think they're called. I think the maximum is like up to 4 days and then it'll stop accumulating. But you just get a bunch of, it's basically to incentivize you logging out in a safe zone. It's to make it okay, like give you a bit of a catch up or a little bit of a bonus if you log out for a few days then come back, stuff like that. So you can level a little faster. Every time you walk into a sanctuary, I don't know I forget what the term they use in SWTOR is, but every time you walk into a sanctuary, you get a message at the top saying, "Rested XP is only available for subscribers." I'm like, okay, all right. It happens every time you walk in. If you walk in, walk out, walk in, walk out, for whatever reason, you'll get it like twice. And that's the other thing, actually. Something that a little bit of a positive that I was impressed with is everything in the game is basically cohesive. What I mean by that is that like there's no loading. Once you're in a zone, the zone is basically, there's no instances within the zone. So there's like in the starting area that I was in, there's a big hut, like palace, and you can go walk in there and there's no loading screen. You just walk in, and that's nice. I think it's also like a product of the fact that the game locations all feel really small. They feel a little cramped to me, and I don't know exactly what it is, but they do. It's hard to put my finger on it. I just never got the sense that I was in like a big planet. I felt like I was in like a very large area of a theme park, which might be appropriate. I felt like I was at Disneyland, which is unlike in 14. I do really feel like my character is in like a giant forest or something like that, and when I'm in Gridania, or I'm in this huge desert when I'm in Thanalan, or I really feel like when you're in Lenosha and there's these huge white rock cliffs by the shore, and you're like, you can like walk beside them and you can like see how small your character is, and really great sense of scale and all that I just didn't really get from SWTOR. Combat was fine. It was responsive. It was pretty good. I chose a bounty hunter because I thought that was cool, and it uses like it's basically World of Warcraft with a Star Wars skin. I wish the game's art style was grittier. Let me finish talking about being a bounty hunter. Yeah, you get like there's some like neat mechanics like bounty. You have like a heat. You pick like one of two different like subclasses. There's like 4 that you can pick if you go Empire, and then 4 if you go Republic. One of them is like, here's your Sith fighter, here's your Sith mage, like caster, here's your bounty hunter, here's your, they're called like operative or something, or spies, and each one of those has 2 subclasses, and then each one of those subclasses has 3 different specs you can go into. So I went with the flamethrower spec of the like more what are they called? Power Tech, I think. Power Tech bounty hunters, which are like, they used equipment and stuff like that. And I was like, that's cool. You can use a flamethrower. That's cool. So you have this heat bar, and using abilities with your flamethrower stuff increases heat. And then if you max out on heat, then you have to wait for it to cool down. And it was cool. You get some AoE attacks. You get a really cool attack where you do like an uppercut by like launching with your jetpack. That was kind of sick. I was actually kind of surprised that an attack that cool was in the game. You do weird visual glitches. Everything I feel like comes back to a gripe. The game just kind of didn't click with me overall. I'm just kind of trying to understand why it didn't. Weird visual bugs with like bars would be like on the user interface. The bars would be like filled up, and then they wouldn't be, or there would be like, it's like the you have your experience bar, for instance, and the experience bar fills yellow, let's say, and it's filled up to a certain point, but then like down the bar, like further along in the bar, there's just like a random line of yellow, like it just bugged out. All these like weird visual glitches with the UI that was really odd. Also, they lock having multiple hotbars behind a subscription. So you can use multiple hotbars, but you have to actually like click a button to move between them. You can't just have two hotbars like on top of each other. Which you can like everything. The 14 trial is so good. They don't lock any of that stuff behind you. I spent like a whole 30 minutes just customizing my UI in 14, where I've got 4 dedicated hotbars for all my combat abilities. You can customize the shape. You can customize where they're at on the screen. You can you get access to 10 of them and use tons of like customizability. It's super, super great. I love customizability. I thought the fact that I was locked behind a paywall was pretty lame, but okay, whatever. I wish the game had a grittier art style. It's a little like cartoonish, which is like fine. It'll work for some people, but I wish it was like a little dirtier and gruffer and a little less like colorful. I don't know. It's when I think of Star Wars, I do think of like, it's a very like dirty, unclean image of space as opposed to Star Trek, which is a lot more. Stuff in Star Trek is like just kind of the way the universe in that show is. It's like things are very clean, like where you would expect them to be on like the Enterprise and all that. People generally keep things clean. Star Wars is like grimy and dirty and all this like old hacked together, duct taped together machinery, and it's like dusty and sandy. I think that's super. That's part of like Star Wars' image to me, the aesthetic to me, and having this kind of like a more cartoony graphic style is, it doesn't excite me as much. Character customization, character creation was a little meh for me. It was it felt a little simple. You get like, they have a picture of it on the Steam page. It's alright. It's kind of decent. You basically only get to pick your body type and then a bunch of stuff about your face and skin. It's okay. The best thing that I can say about the game is that it kind of made me appreciate all the things in 14 more, which is very harsh, but it's true. there is like a light side, dark side component, and I never like those in Star Wars games because I think games in general are most games are not able to do compelling moral choices because they aren't really choices. Most games do moral choices as like, for instance, there's a quest that I did in SWTOR where basically you talk to this woman and she's like, oh, my husband has kidnapped our son. And you're like, what? She goes, yeah, our son, he's like force sensitive and I want to send him to this Sith planet so he can go study to be a Sith. But my husband doesn't want him to be, so he's stolen him away. And you have to go talk to the husband and like, you get a choice where the husband basically says like, no, I was at a Sith academy and you succeed or they kill you. And they're brutal, they're savages. And I'm not going to let my son go there. I'm not going to put him through that. Because I was through that. And I escaped with my life. And you basically get a choice. He's like, I'm going to take him to whatever planet. We're going to escape. And you get a choice. And it's like, let them go and like go tell the mom. He basically bargains with you and he says, why don't you go tell my wife that you convinced me to take him to the Sith planet. So you can go lie to her and tell her that everything worked out. And that he took him himself. So you get two choices, which are marked light side and dark side. And one of the choices is agree to go lie to the wife. The other choice is kill the father. His son is right there. You get a choice? This is okay. It's like, tell the mom, tell a little white lie for the greater good, or kill a man in front of his son, his child son. And it's like, this is not a choice. Are you kidding me? Only if you're role-playing as like a psychopath. Are you kidding me? There's no choice to like, you're in like a public area. There's no choice to like force him to come back. It's like good choice or psychopath choice. And that's like not interesting. That's not compelling. Because most people, when they play games that have moral choices, they just go for the good guy options anyway. They go for the paragon options. Because doing the evil choices make them feel bad. Because most of the evil choices are framed as like evil. The games present moral choices as way too binary. Way too binary and way too extreme. Like there's no middle ground or gray area where like, in like Persona for instance. So I played Persona 3. Great game. And it's not quite moral choices, but there's a lot of points in that game where you're talking to characters and you get dialogue choices. You'll get like 3 choices. And they'll like say something to you, and there's like a relationship tracker where like they'll have positive or negative responses to things. And like sometimes they say something, and there's like no perfect response that you're given. Sometimes like a character will tell you something that's like just super rough, and like you can't help with it, and it's like the real world. And like, you get 3 options, and like 2 of them are not good. Like one of them's really bad. One of them's like, will get like a meh reaction, and one of them is like the least bad. And the least bad one will be like, yeah, thanks. Yeah. And it's just like, that's just like real life. And like sometimes you don't get a good option. Sometimes literally you're in a situation where you can't say anything good. And there's nothing that you can do or say to like make a situation better. And like that is compelling. Because that's like situations you actually go through in real life. Sometimes someone tells you something and you're like, dude, I have like no idea what to say to you. Like, I feel for you, but I don't know what to do. It's not like how many people, like, someone tells you something like, really sensitive and personal. And in your head, there's two choices, and one is like the perfect choice, and the other one is, you fucking suck. Fuck you, dude. You deserve that to happen to you. Like, no, that's not what happens. That's not a choice that anyone has to make. That's not close to real experience at all, and it's not interesting. And so many games just fall on cartoonishly good or cartoonishly evil moral choices. And there's always a choice. Sometimes you're in a situation and you can't make a good choice. Sometimes the situation's just bad and you can't finagle your way out of it with like a dialogue option. And Star Wars games really like annoy me with this because when you think about it, and it's dumb too, because in Star Wars the whole light side dark side thing in the movies was, one, it was kind of just a Jedi thing, and two, it's not as clear cut as good and evil. Like the light side, the Jedi, they're not perfect, right? Like you can make a strong argument that like they're way too strict and they're repressive, and like that's not great, and that can lead to bad things and all that. On the other hand, like, yeah, the Sith, they strive for power and all that, but there's also components of the Sith code that's like listening to your emotions and like one of the main values of Sithdom is like passion. Like, is passion bad? Not always. It's kind of a neutral thing. It's just, these are the set of alignments. If you got choices in Star Wars games that was like stoicism versus empathy, or stoicism versus like saying something super out there really strongly, and maybe the stoic, depending, like, you don't know what the right option is to say to a character, and maybe like you say something stoic to them and they end up working it out on their own, whatever problem they're having. So maybe sometimes you choose the stoic option and they have no idea what to do, and you just weren't there for them and you disconnected from them too much. And then they make like a bad choice because that you didn't give them any you didn't connect with them on an emotional level. You only connected with them on a logical level. That's not always great. That's not a good thing. That's something I struggle with. I know, like, that's not a great thing. And maybe on the flip side, you get like a choice to like give a really strong piece of advice, like follow your heart or something. Sometimes maybe that'll result in a good thing happening, and sometimes maybe a total disaster is going to come out of it. That's an interesting choice. Not just that like the situation is gray, but that the outcome, you do what you think, you say what you think is right depending on your personality and what you think is going to be best for them. And you just kind of like throw the dice and you just throw it to fate. And maybe it's going to turn out well and maybe it won't. But like, that's interesting. You can make the light side choice, the Jedi choice. And then, I mean, like, that's what the prequels are about. As much as the prequels are very, some shoddy writing choices, a lot of the big component of the prequels is that the repression of the Jedi Council and their hierarchy and their commitment to tradition made Anakin, who was unstable to begin with, was not raised in that environment. They didn't extend to him, like, he grew up without a father, he was a fucking slave. You don't think this kid is gonna have, like, problems? Like, he's gonna run into something, like, problems he's gonna react to? No, Anakin, you will abide by our ascetic practices, and you will not give in to temptation because it's a sin. It's like, no, fucking of course he's gonna freak out. And when Palpatine comes up to him and he appeals to his emotions for the first fucking time in like 15 years that he's been a Jedi, Palpatine's like, I hear you. I know you're afraid. And I can offer you something that's going to... Like, of course he's going to go for it. It was their fucking fault that they... I'm going on a Star Wars rant. It was their fault that they got him to this point. That's what that does. There's benefits to moderation and self-control and stoicism, but there's a limit to it, and it's not a panacea for everything in the world. And, you know, on the same token, following your heart and being passionate and going for it, you know, sometimes that can be negative, but it can also be positive too. Sometimes people are just like overly ambitious and they do bad things because their ambition clouds their ethics, or their ethics warp around their ambition. Which you could argue is what a lot of the Sith are like. Well, Penny just clicked on my desk. A lot of the Sith are like that. Unlimited power. And it's so disappointing to see this legitimately interesting clash between these two extremes where they could go either way, and then just see that simplified to do the right thing or kill a man in front of his son. And it's so disappointing. It's so annoying. When Star Wars, what was it, Fallen Order? Yeah, Fallen Order. When it came out and there was this like interview at like E3 with the lead devs, and the guy was like, are there going to be light side, dark side choices? And the devs were like, no. I was like, I didn't even play that game. It looked cool. I didn't even play that game. But I was like, oh, thank God. Thank God. Because it's way more interesting to just pick a side and just explore that. I don't know if it actually gets explored, but like take a character who's a Jedi and just do stuff with him. Because when you force these moral choices into the game, what ends up happening is that the way they're implemented is they have no real meaning, and it just feels like wishy-washy, or it gets boiled down to, oh well, we have to make these choices meaningful, so let's tie it to gameplay. And it gets just tied to like your stats, or like the way that it works in SWTOR is you can use certain items if your certain items are like dark side or light side attuned, and you can only use them if you're on that end. And I'm like, really? Every choice, I'm like, nothing means anything. If it was like, you can tell, if it was like there was a situation in a Star Wars game, let me just brainstorm for a second. There was a situation in a Star Wars game where a character comes to you, or there's a character and they're like, maybe they're a part of your party or something, and like they're like, my family got killed by the Empire, and they have an opportunity where like they can go on like a solo mission and go aim for like the person who like killed their family, but it's gonna divert from like whatever your current objective is. Like you're not going into the same place, and they're gonna be like you catch them or something, they're trying to escape, and you're like, hey, what's going on? And they're like, they come clean with you, and they're like, down on this planet, I know we're leaving for wherever, but down on this planet, General Smigglebiggle who killed my family, that bastard, he's down there. I have like I'm gonna fucking crash a ship. I'm gonna fucking kill him. I'm gonna crash it right in there. And you're gonna be like, you get a choice. They want to like kamikaze an escape pod into the base and like destroy, like into the power generator, and like just blow it up. They have this crazy idea, and you're like, whoa. And you get a choice where it's like you can say like you have to control your emotions and you have to do this or that. Or you can say like you need to follow your heart. Let's look up the Sith code. Let me just get a better idea. Sith code. Code of the Sith. Peace is a lie. There is only passion. Through passion I gain strength. Through strength I gain power. Through power I gain victory. Through victory my chains are broken. The Force shall free me. And you can basically take two. It's not presented as a dark side choice. You look at that and you're like, okay, well, what's like the ethos of this? The ethos is that like there's no such thing as stability. Things are always moving. There's only passion. Even when you like follow your passion, you follow your heart, that gives you strength, and strength gives you power, and you win through that power. It's like being passionate gives you the power to free yourself from the chains, the chains around you that are shackling you. And you can say two choices. You could say like, no, think about like what you have to do. They can have this whole thing about like, I have nothing left. Like, I have no family. I'm just on this ship. I'm just here because like you people are here. And the only thing that's going to give my life meaning is if I kill that fucker, General Smiggle-Biggle. Fuck, why did I choose such a dumb name? And you can say like, no, think about, you can try to convince them, or you can say, you convince them not to and control their emotions and say that like, no, it's worth living, or you need to let go of anger. Or you can take the angle of like, it's your life and you get to choose what you want to do with it. Like that's if you read like the Sith code, that's like the Sith argument is like, it's your choice. You can choose if this is like how you want to go and how you want to go out and what you want to do. That's your decision, and no one should be able to stop you. Because imagine that kind of a choice, and it's not presented with like a little icon that there's not like a little icon that represents the dark side and light side like there is in SWTOR. There's literally a light side icon that's like white and blue, and then another one that's red and black. It's just like these two arguments are presented to you that you can take. And honestly, I think a lot of people would go with the latter. A lot of people would be like, yeah, no, like, it's your life. You can do what you want. But they never give you that choice. They never give you a choice like that. Unless there's something in, like, Knights of the Old Republic 2 that I'm not familiar with. I haven't played that game. I played... How much of Old Republic 1 of KOTOR did I play? Played about 30 hours of it. Man, 30 hours? Yeah, I streamed it, actually. And it was alright, but I was generally not impressed with those choices that I was given. And I thought that ultimately, in at least the original game, they were very shallow and uninteresting. I wish that less games would start, like, when they come up with their moral choices, less of, like, good and evil and more, like, arguments, like, points of view. Like, like, literally look at a fucking political compass and then, like, throw a dart and be like, what would an argument for, like, top right be? What would an argument for bottom left be in this, you know, the political compass quadrant? What kind of argument would they make? How would they see things? Because that's like an actual character. When you have these, like, shallow binary choices, like, it's not a character. It's just, like, generic good and evil obelisks. Monuments. Pardon. There's no, like, nuance, or you never, like, you never, in terms of role playing, you don't get an idea of like what kind of person is my character? What is their thought process that they would make an argument for controlling your emotions or for following your heart and taking your life into your own hands? Because that like gets you invested in your character. Yeah. SWOTOR, not super interested. I uninstalled it, so I probably won't be playing it in the future. Didn't grip me. Art style wasn't that compelling to me. Moral choices were pretty disappointing. Combat was okay. What else? Voice acting was overall pretty good. Some of the character voices did not fit the characters, in my opinion. Like this dude who like skinny looking dude who had this really husky voice. I guess I'm kind of skinny and my voice is a little raspy, but I don't know. It sounded weird. And what else? A lot of things that took me out of the game, from weird UI bugs to the cash shop being thrown in my face and subscriptions being thrown in my face all the time. What else? I found it weird that like they give you a specific backstory and then they expect you to like care about these characters that you just met. Like, I just picked a bounty hunter and I start on this planet and you're introduced to like these two characters, and one of them, within 5 minutes, like you go out and do a quest and then you come back and one of them's been killed, and then you're like, your character without... It's so weird because like this really affects one of the characters, like the other character you were talking to. And then you get these dialogue options that are like, I'm gonna avenge him. And like none of them are like, none of them reflect the fact that you just met this person. Like if it was a role play, I feel like I'd be able to say, yeah, I don't really care. Or you could just pick the self-centered option, which is like that character was trying to get you into like this big bounty hunter event. It's called The Hunt. And you can take the option of like, I don't care. I'm gonna do it on my own. And you should get the option to like alienate your companion to the point where they will not even join you in the first place. They can say fuck you, and then later on, like they can be working against you. Wouldn't that be fucking crazy? Wouldn't that be crazy if like you can pick one option that's like, he means a lot to you, I'll avenge him, which doesn't make any sense because you just met him. Or you can say like, this is wrong. The guy who killed him is a scumbag. I'm gonna shut this guy down. Like maybe you get 3 choices, and one of the choices, those are like 2 of them. One is I'm gonna avenge him. 2 is I'm gonna avenge him because I don't like that guy who killed him. And the third one could be like, I don't care, I'm gonna do it myself. And then you can go on like another quest line by yourself, and then that companion character, like they go like, okay, fuck you. And then later on, you go and you do all this stuff, you get into the hunt. Dude, what if you would have to, like, as part of the hunt storyline, what if, like, the last fight changes depending on whether or not you picked, like, you alienated that companion character? Maybe you could see the guy who was like the scumbag and who killed them did like maybe he's like the final boss, but like maybe he has like a second in command or something, and he's like, that would be the penultimate boss if you worked with the companion character. But if you alienated them, the companion character, who's like a pretty nice person, she like fucking kills that guy. And now she's the penultimate challenge, and on the road to this last dude. and maybe you get like a choice at the end to be callous and just kill her, and or you can get a choice to like spare her and be like, I think I had a really, you get to see the consequences of your actions of like, whoa, when I turned you away, that like really changed you, and like you became super dark, and I've never like seen the consequences of like my actions and me being so callous on other people. And then like maybe you get to rejoin with them, or you get to like help them escape, and then you go take down the dude. That would be so fucking cool. And maybe if you like help them escape, they can show up on another planet, they're doing something else, you get access to like different stuff, you can get them as your companion again. That would be so fucking cool, and it would actually invest me in the storyline. That would be really cool. I'm thinking about that right now. How alive would the world feel? Like, that's what you want. You want a world... The world didn't feel very interactive. Because it was like... It didn't feel that alive, at least from like the 5 hours I played. And I know 5 hours isn't a lot, but from what I played of just the beginning, it was like... It felt a little contrived. I think the idea of like... legitimately seeing the consequences of your actions in the story reflect on the characters would be so dynamic and so interesting. And that's what makes a world feel alive. Like, on top of like the details and the lore and all these different factions or whatever that have these conflicts, your character or like the world reacting to things happening, whether or not it's your character, is so important. It's so like it brings you into the world. I wish that the game was more like that, and maybe it is later on, but it did not grip me enough to really care to see it, which is a problem, because 14 gripped me pretty early with some really strong cutscenes, and giving you a little bit of player choice with like, there's this, like, every time you start off in 14, your character is always asked, like in that opening sequence, your character is always asked like, why are you coming to Eorzea? And you get like 3 different options. One is like power, one is wealth, and then one is just like ... One is just like, you can stay silent. And then, not really spoilers, but later on, like once you're in like the post-patch content of A Realm Reborn, someone asks you basically the same question. They're like, so why did you become an adventurer? Why did you come to Eorzea? And you get a more robust set of answers. You get like, to protect people, to gain fame, to do like, I forget the exact options, but it's like you get more options and they're more detailed. And it's this like crazy sense of like, my character started out as one kind of person, and then over the course of the game, over the course of the story, they changed, and they legitimately changed in their motivations. And all these characters that they've met, and these like battles they've been through, and these adventures you've been on. And that stuff is super cool and super dope. Even if it doesn't really mean anything. And I think that's important, that it doesn't have any bearing on gameplay. I think actually having it kind of disconnected from gameplay, unless it's going to be like super, you're going to go, you got to commit really hard if you're going to make it tied to gameplay. Because if you're not, and if it's like, people are just going to min-max it and they're going to boil it down to a numbers game. But if you present it to them and you're like, there is literally no gameplay change, it's just your character and how you're experiencing this, how you choose to exist in the story. That is like, I think that gets more interesting responses from people. And especially if the answers you provide are interesting. Ooh, let me Sorry if anyone hates the sound of that. I've been talking for about... This might be one of the longest episodes of the podcast. I really got sidetracked talking about, getting extorted and sexual harassment and all this stuff. I hope this has been somewhat enjoyable, somewhat entertaining. Sorry the first half of this is probably front-loaded with pretty dour content, but I hope everyone's enjoyed. There'll be a video coming out on Friday. There probably won't be a video in like the first week of August, so like the week after that, because I am going on a retreat for my that same high school, my high school. They have this retreat they do every year, and they wanted me to come back to be a leader on it, and I was like, yeah, because I had a great time on mine, and so I'm going on that next week. And so it's like a 4-day no phones type thing. And I'm looking forward to it. We've been spending a lot of time prepping for it, but it is beside the point. I won't be able to work on a video, and I do not have a backlog. I basically have a schedule where I spend, part of the schedule is spending like two straight days just editing, and maybe a morning. And that's how I get my videos. That's how I get like 20 to 30 minute videos out every week. So, thank you very much for watching. I hope you're looking forward to the video. I hope you enjoyed this one. Feel free to leave a comment, ask any questions. I'd like to do responding to comments at the start of the podcast in the future. I think that would be a lot of fun. And thank you very much for watching. I don't know how many times I can say thank you for watching. I just don't know how to close things out. I really need to come up with an intro. Bye. Sorry, an outro. What the hell?